welcome to Fantastic Fights, the podcast about a middle-aged man playing adventure game books out loud on the internet. That middle-aged man is me, Hieronymus J. Doom, and this episode is one I'm very excited about because we're playing Eye of the Dragon from 2005, the first fighting fantasy book written by Ian Livingstone since Return to Firetop Mountain all the way back in 1992. This book was kindly provided for me by James Druitt. Many thanks for that, James. I know absolutely nothing about Eye of the Dragon. After the series had lain dormant for a decade, the rights to the fighting fantasy series were picked up by Wizard Books in 2002. They republished a really good selection of the most iconic fighting fantasy books, and then decided to add some new titles to the mix. It obviously made all the sense in the world for the first new title to be written by one of the original duo, and so we get Eye of the Dragon. It's a relatively slender volume, which weighs in at a slightly odd 407 sections, and the cover art is mostly taken up by design elements. Once you've got past the big series title and a kind of weird shield thing, the actual picture is confined to a circle in the middle of the page. It shows a dragon's eye, so I guess well done there. I don't know why it was decided that this was a better option than a full-colour painting, but I'm sure a design historian could tell me. All I know is that it looks a bit underwhelming, if I'm honest. It's not unpleasant to look at. It's fine. I'd just much rather have a full-colour illustration that takes up the whole of the front cover. I am delighted to discover that the internal illustrations are by Martin McKenna though, so that's going to make me happy. Let's take a look at the rules. We are in the most old school of old school fighting fantasy territory here. There's skill, stamina and luck, all present and correct, and nary another stat in sight. And that pleases me on some level. Much as I like seeing people come up with interesting new systems, I think there's a lot to be said for keeping to the basics. It worked for the Ramones, and I'm hoping it's going to work for Ian Livingstone here. Aside from that, we aren't even told what equipment we get other than the classic 10 provisions. We are going to eat well on this adventure, which makes a change from the recent books. There's no money, no sword, no boiled leather armour, which makes it feel even more stripped down than usual. It's going to be interesting to see whether these elements are actually absent, or whether it just assumes we've got a standard adventuring kit and doesn't feel the need to specify it. There is a neat feature where there's several pre-generated characters you can choose from if you don't want to roll randomly. They've got a variety of different stats, and also each of them has quite a detailed backstory, which I think is a lovely idea because it provides another bridge between the game books and the role-playing games, and I think that's nice to see. I'm not doing a pre-generated character, of course. I'm much too hardcore and handsome for that. Although, it probably would have been a good idea to take one of the pre-generated characters because my character, who I've decided to call Quack Quack Flamenco, because that sounds like a very heroic name, has a skill of 8, stamina of 18 and a luck of 9. Looks like I'm going to need every single one of those provisions, assuming I can make it past the first fight. With all that said, let's dive straight in and play Eye of the Dragon. Background. Like any seasoned adventurer, you are always interested to hear rumours about gold, diamonds, and hidden treasure. Unfortunately, you have been down on your luck recently, and you are struggling to earn the few copper pieces needed for food and lodgings. You are hoping that your luck will change soon. 2 days ago you arrived in Fang, a town notorious for its deadly labyrinth death trap dungeon. The annual challenge is taking place next month and the town is buzzing with excitement. So, nice to see Ian Livingstone referencing his own work again. He does it quite a lot. I'm always happy to see it. It makes the world feel real. You are staying in the damp attic of the Blue Pig Tavern, sharing your room with other travellers and wretches who have fallen on hard times. And so you always sleep with your sword under your pillow. One night a stranger enters the room and slumps down on the bed opposite you. Lit by the pale moonlight coming through the single window, you see that he is a tall, thick-set man dressed in dark robes that hide all but his eyes. The amount of dirt and dust on his clothes show that he has travelled far. You are intrigued by this stranger and offer him a drink from your flask, which he accepts with a grunt. He introduces himself as Henry Delacour, and he tells you of his recent adventures, how he almost lost his life in search of a legendary item of treasure. Hello. That's pricked my ears up. Naturally, you are excited to hear about the treasure and offer him another drink in the hope of gaining more information. He goes on to tell you of his 5-year search for a metre-high solid gold dragon with jewelled eyes. He describes in detail how he finally found the underground labyrinth that led to the golden dragon. He tells you of all the monsters he killed in the labyrinth to reach that dragon, and how he entered the room in which it had been hidden for years. He smiles as he recalls the pleasure of first sighting the dragon, but tells of how angry he became when he noticed the jewelled eyes were missing. He had been told that without the eyes the dragon could not be touched, as to do so would mean instant death. I'm not sure I want a table ornament that can kill me. Call me a coward if you will, but when I'm buying an objet d'art, one of the first things I ask myself is this likely to be fatal if I touch it? He was not sure if the death curse was true or not, but he did not dare find out for himself. He left the room without touching the dragon and began to search the labyrinth in the hope of finding the 2 emerald eyes. The search almost cost him his life when he entered a cave and was attacked by a 2-headed troll some 3 meters tall. Having survived the battle, he decided to give up his quest, as gold was no use to a dead man. You tell him that you are an adventurer like himself and that you would dearly like to finish this quest. You ask him to tell you where the labyrinth is located. He replies that he will, on the condition that if you find the golden dragon, you will bring it back to him and share the spoils from its sale. I promise you it is worth more than all the gold in Death Trap Dungeon, so there will be plenty of wealth for both of us, he says convincingly. To guess, I would say it's worth 335,000 gold pieces. You assure him that if you succeed you will definitely return. In that case, you won't mind drinking this, he says gleefully, while handing you a small glass bottle of purple liquid. On asking him what it is, he tells you that it is a slow-acting poison, and unless you return to him for the antidote within 14 days, you will die. You snatch the bottle from him, stare at him coldly, and drink the liquid in one gulp. Wow, it's brave, or foolish, or both. I feel as though there was probably an easier way of resolving the issue, but I mean, it's a pretty cool image. The taking of the slow-acting poison and putting you on a clock is a great bit of business. So, yeah, I can't complain too much about the silliness of gulping down poison voluntarily. It serves the plot very nicely. He produces a map that shows the way through Darkwood Forest to a woodcutter's hut. Inside, there are stairs leading down from a trapdoor to an underground labyrinth. At that point, the map ends, although he warns you that the passageways are inhabited by violent, evil people and fearsome creatures. He then lies down on his bed and goes to sleep, exhausted. You try and sleep yourself, but you are restless. Yeah, I'd be restless if I just poisoned myself. And you can only think about the dangerous adventure that awaits you. In the morning, the mysterious stranger hands you a small leather pouch. Inside, you find a large emerald cut in the shape of an eye. You found one. I hope you will find the other. Here, take it. You will fail without it. I will wait for you here. Remember 2 things. 1, you have 14 days to return, and no more. 2, find the matching emerald to the one I gave you and place both in the eye sockets before you touch the dragon itself, he says very seriously. Before setting off for Darkwood Forest, you fill your backpack with provisions, put the leather pouch and 10 gold pieces in your pocket and say goodbye to Henry Delacour. Good luck, he says. You'll need it. Then the huge balding man extends his hand and doesn't so much shake yours as crush it. His icy blue eyes stare out from his chubby face, watching you carefully. Although he is smiling, there is something in his eyes that makes you feel uncomfortable and unwilling to trust him. But it's too late now. You set off and look back once to see him leaning against the doorway of the Blue Pig Tavern. Is there a golden dragon? Are you being slowly poisoned? What is it about Henry Delacour that makes you feel so ill at ease? No doubt all of these questions will be answered in the coming days. Now turn over. So that is a really strong opening, I think. Sets up the mission without too much fuss. Gives us a little mystery to think about as we're on the adventure. Really nicely written. I think Ian Livingstone is still arguably the best actual wordsmith in the fighting fantasy canon for his ability to just describe things quickly and efficiently, but in a way that's also very evocative. Ideal children's writer. It's also quite refreshing to start an Ian Livingstone book without a shopping list of 20 items that we need to get in order to vanquish some nameless evil. I also appreciate that this story, at least to start with, isn't about some terrible undead evil rising up to threaten all of Alanzia. That is a nice thing as well. I've said before that I do find the adventures with slightly lower stakes actually easier to get invested in. So, first section proper. The 3-day trek across the pagan plains to Darkwood Forest is exhausting. It passes without incident, apart from an attack by 2 wild dogs that you quickly dispatch with your sword. The most memorable sight of your journey is the view to the east of Firetop Mountain with its distinctive red peak rising sharply up to the sky. You pass by the dwarf village of Stonebridge, cross Red River, and finally enter Darkwood Forest. You follow the map through the foreboding forest and finally arrive at the woodcutter's hut, nearly 5 days after leaving Henry Delacour at the Blue Pig Tavern in Fang. So if it's 5 days back, that gives us a total of 3 days, given that we've lost 1 day to going to sleep before the poison takes effect. Despite feeling tired and hungry, seeing the woodcutter's hut is a real boost to your spirits. The small hut is made of oak and its front door is open. You poke your head through the doorway and shout, "Hello!" in the hope of seeing the woodcutter, but the piles of dirt and debris on the floor tell you he is long gone. In the far corner of the hut you see a wood-burning stove, and underneath a dirty rug you discover a trapdoor. You lift it up and see wooden steps leading down into the gloom. Do you want to search the hut first, or would you like to go straight down the steps? So really nice, interesting early decision to make. I think we will go and search the hut. You open drawers and look in cupboards, but find little more than broken crockery and general mess. You walk over to a pile of logs by the stove. Behind the logs you find a large axe with a broken handle. There is a strange inscription etched into the axe head that has no meaning to you. Intrigued, you put the axe head in your backpack, hoping it may be of use to you. You walk over to the trapdoor and walk down the stairs. First of what I feel will be many, many items. Very curious to know who built this mysterious labyrinth and decided to site it under a woodcutter's hut in the forest. It's a mystery. Is Henry Delacour somehow going to turn out to be the designer and builder of this weird space? The stairs lead down to a gloomy stone-walled corridor that is lit by a few flickering torches. In the dim light you can just see that there is thick slime dripping down the walls. There is an unpleasant stench in the air. You hear a scampering noise and look down to see rats running across the muddy floor in front of you. Ahead, the corridor soon splits at a junction. Do you want to turn left, or do you want to turn right? Straight or left, right decision, you know the score. We go left. After turning sharply right, the corridor soon ends at a large oak door with ornate iron hinges. The door is firmly shut. Do you want to try and force the door open, or save your energy and return to the last junction to continue on? Well, I'm going to do everything in my power to continue on this path, so we'll see whether we can push this door open. You take a step back before charging at the door. Roll 2 dice. If the total is the same or less than your skill, the door flies open. If the total is greater than your skill, the door does not give way, and all you succeed in doing is injuring your shoulder. Lose 1 stamina point. So let's find out which of these options we go to with my whopping skill of 8. I roll a 6, that's not a good start. And a 1, that's 7, that is below my skill of 8. The door flies open. The door opens into a cold room, which is empty except for a large mirror hanging on the wall. There is another door on the opposite wall. Would you like to look in the mirror, or would you rather walk past it and open the door opposite? I think I will look in the mirror. Nothing ventured, nothing gained. As you look into the mirror, your body is gripped by a terrible pain. Try as you might, you find it impossible to look away. Lose 2 stamina points. Stamina now 16. Do you want to try and cover your eyes with your hands, or would you rather try to smash the mirror with your sword? I feel like if I can cover my eyes with my hands, that will hopefully break the spell. I don't really want to smash the mirror. Bad things happen if you smash mirrors in fantasy worlds. You try with all your might to raise your hands to shield your eyes, but find it impossible. Lose 1 stamina point. Stamina now 15. As the pain increases, you draw your sword and try to smash the mirror. The mirror shatters and the terrible pain in your body slowly eases. When you finally recover, you search the room but find nothing except a gold piece which is lodged in a crack in the floor. Gold now 11. You decide to keep a piece of the mirror for luck and leave the room by the door opposite. Oh, I do hope this bit of mirror is going to turn out to be useful. That would be very cool. I quite like it when traps turn out to have a positive aspect to them as well as a negative. I think that's really clever. If you can do it, you need to judge it right, because no one wants to be forced to stick their hand in a scorpion pit in order to beat the book. But if you can throw something in there that turns out to be faintly useful later, that's a really cool thing and softens the blow of falling for the trap. The door opens into another dimly lit stone-walled passageway which ends at a doorway. The door is not locked, and you enter a small circular room with a shallow pool at its centre. A ledge around the pool allows you to walk to the closed door opposite you. At the bottom of the pool lie several gold coins. Do you want to throw one of your gold pieces into the pool and make a wish, or would you rather walk round to the far door? So there is a picture of the room. I mean, it's not the thing I would necessarily choose to do an illustration of. I feel like a circular room with a pool in it is hardly the most difficult thing to visualise, but it is a nicely rendered bit of work, and Martin McKenna has just spent a little bit more time than maybe most illustrators would, making the wall, the curved wall, look really interesting and textured. Yeah, it's a really nice bit of work, really evocative. Particularly like the way the coins glint beneath dark water. That's particularly nice. But yeah, well, we've got 11 gold. We can spare 1 to make a wish. You make a wish, but nothing happens. This is not a wishing pool. Do you want to reach into the pool to collect some of the gold coins and recover the gold piece you tossed in? No, thank you. Do you want to walk directly to the door opposite? Yes, please. So, gold now 10. But, yeah, we won't go dabbling for gold. I think we will leave that where it is and just continue with the adventure. Really not clear whether gold is going to be vital, useful, or neither here nor there at this stage. The door opens back onto a passageway, and after walking along it for a few minutes, you see another door in the left-hand wall. There is a small window in the door that looks into a candlelit room in which a woman sits at a bench with her back to you. You knock on the door, but she does not stand up. Do you want to enter the room, or would you rather continue walking along the corridor? I'll enter the room, thanks. You say hello to the old woman, and yet she still does not turn around to look at you. You decide to walk up to her and tap her on the shoulder. Suddenly, she spins around. Her eyes are wide open with glee, and an evil, hysterical laugh erupts from her mouth. Close up, you notice she has tiny snakes in her hair, and realise in horror that she must be a Medusa. You try to avoid her staring eyes by looking away, as you know her gaze is deadly. Roll 2 dice. If the total is the same or less than your skill, you avoid her stare. If you are carrying a piece of broken mirror, you may be able to reflect her stare back at her. So we need to pass the skill test first. 8. Oh, a bare pass. And we do have the bit of mirror, which is exciting. You take the piece of mirror out of your backpack and hold it up to the Medusa. You hear an anguished scream which quickly fades to silence. Slowly you open one eye and then the other to see the rigid torso of the Medusa, who has been turned to stone by the reflection of her own stare. You put the mirror in your backpack and search the room. In a corner cupboard you find an ornate wooden box which opens to reveal a strange necklace. A small snake skull hangs on a silver chain. Do you want to put the necklace around your neck? Yes, I do. As you place the necklace over your head, you see 2 ghostly figures before your eyes. 2 shimmering skeletons armed with swords seem to be coming right at you. It is as if they are running right through you, and then they are gone. Everything appears to be normal again, and slightly shaken, you leave the room. I wasn't expecting that. Another door appears in the right-hand wall of the passageway. It is made of dark oak and is standing half open. Do you want to enter the room, or would you rather keep on walking? Ah, yes. If there's one thing Ian Livingstone does sometimes like, it's doing a very long corridor with a series of encounters nailed to the sides. And this seems to be a good example of precisely that. But yeah, I mean, we're just going to say yes to all of these encounters. You enter a small room which is completely empty apart from a playing card lying on the floor. It is the Queen of Spades, and it looks slightly unusual in that the Queen has a very wide grin on her face. Do you want to pick up the card, or would you rather leave the room and walk on? I mean, it's upsetting and weird, which I like, and I'm going to take the bait. I'm going to pick up the card. You pick up the card and it springs out of your hand, landing back on the floor. There is a sudden flash of blinding light. The card disappears, and standing before you from out of nowhere is an old woman, dressed as the Queen of Spades. She smiles and says, "Thank you so much. Here are 5 gold pieces for your trouble." She hands you the gold before walking slowly and elegantly out of the room. Still somewhat puzzled, you put the coins in your backpack and continue your quest. I do think Ian Livingstone is really good at weird magical encounters. There's just so much imagination. Further up the passageway, you see another door on the right-hand wall. You listen at the door and hear scratching sounds coming from the other side. Do you want to enter the room or carry on walking up the passageway? Scratching sounds doesn't sound great. I might give this one a miss. I've got to give some of them a miss, surely. I mean, I know the most efficient way to solve a game book like this is to simply do all of the different encounters and work out which one's useful and which ones are harmful. But sometimes I like to just roleplay being upset by a scratching noise, and that scratching noise is potentially upsetting. So we're going to ignore it and carry on up the passageway. You soon arrive at a formidable-looking iron door in the left-hand wall. If you want to try and open the door, you can. Or would you rather try walking on? Again, it's a long corridor with a bunch of doors off. I see no reason not to open this one. The door opens into a small room. As you walk in, the door slams shut. Behind you stands an ugly, brown-skinned creature about 1.5 meters tall who is dressed in animal skins. It is a goblin, armed with 2 daggers intent on slaying you for your treasure. The goblin has a skill of 5 and a stamina of 5. Nice to get a description of the goblin. I mean, it's a very basic description. It is nice to give you that description, even for one of the most standard fantasy monsters you can get. Anyway, I actually might be able to take out this goblin even with my skill of 8, because skill 5, stamina 5 should be no trouble. So I'm going to roll some dice. I have defeated the goblin and I took no damage. Yeah. A search of the room reveals nothing of interest, and so you decide to search the goblin. You landed some mighty blows on its chest during the battle, which seems to have had little effect on the goblin. You discover that it is wearing a chainmail coat under its clothing. It is made of a strange blue-grey metal, and you decide to put it on. Add 1 skill point. So, the rules as written do say that your skill score can never exceed its initial value unless specifically instructed. No one ever remembers to specifically instruct that you can go above your starting skill score. Some people, cleverly, will say things like, you may add 1 to your attack value in battle while using this item, which I think is a very sensible way of doing it, because if you take that approach, 1, you're not messing with the initial skill level, and 2, you're not having that weird thing where strapping yourself in plate armour makes it easier to jump across chasms. Anyway, here I am going to say I don't care how the rules are written. I'm going to allow myself to benefit from the 1 skill point that I get, raising my skill to 9. I think that's what was intended. So, yeah. And if Ian Livingstone's got a problem with that, he knows where to find me. It's on the internet. You're not the boss of me, Ian Livingstone. You're not the boss of me. The dank and gloomy corridor finally ends at a doorway. As you are deciding whether or not to open it, you hear a noise like that of grating metal, followed by the loud clang of metal hitting stone. You look around to see that your way back is barred by an iron bar gate that has dropped down from the ceiling. You have no choice but to turn the door handle. A crude way of preventing backtracking, but I do appreciate it. You find yourself in a marble-floored room. The room is empty, but there are a pair of golden footprints in a silver circle on the floor. A sign on the wall says, "Please stand on the footprints." From out of nowhere, you hear the sound of thunder followed by a loud, evil laugh. Do you want to stand on the footprints, or do you want to wait and see if the owner of the evil laugh will appear? Well, don't tell me where I'm supposed to stand and then laugh at me. I will wait for the evil giggler to show up. The laughter gets louder and louder, but you cannot tell where it is coming from as it echoes around the room. It turns into a piercing shriek, which is painful to your ears. You begin to lose your sense of balance and fall over, feeling violently ill. The door through which you entered the room slams shut, trapping you inside. Using all of your energy, you just manage to crawl over to the footmarks and haul yourself up to stand on them. There is a sudden, blinding flash, and it seems as though the room is spinning. You are unable to stop yourself from passing out. So, linear to a fault, it would appear. If you're going to do designs like this that are pretty simple, it's all about the quality of the encounters that you provide, and honestly, even though it is a big long corridor with some doors hanging off it, I've found all of the encounters to be really fascinating, so I'm not actually complaining. I think it's going to be a little bit like hard work replaying it. Linear books like this do tend to feel like a bit of a slog, but hey, on a first playthrough, I'm having a lovely time. Hardly able to see and feeling sick and disoriented, you wake up in a tiny room measuring some 2 meters by 2 meters. There are no doors in the walls. On the low ceiling there is a luminous crystal which gives off an eerie green glow. You have been teleported to an old prison cell in another part of the labyrinth. Lose 2 skill points and 2 stamina points. Ow. So skill now 7. And I'm technically no longer cheating because the effect of being teleported reduces my initial skill to 6. Which then means I can benefit from the +1 skill afforded me by the chainmail. I'm now on 13 stamina, and I think the time has come to tuck into my first portion of provisions since I've got 10. So a nice hearty portion of goulash will sort me right out, taking my stamina back up to 17. You scratch around in the thick dirt on the floor and find an iron bolt which is attached to what feels like it could be a trapdoor. You pull on the bolt and suddenly the iron door falls open into a room below. Do you want to search further in the dirt of a prison cell, or would you rather jump down into the room below? I will have a little search in the prison cell, I think. The cell starts to cloud with dust as you rummage through the dirt, making you cough. You find bits of old bone, fragments of rock, some huge toenail clippings which must have come from a giant creature, and some torn rags. You are about to give up the search when your fingers find a small velvet pouch. You untie the knotted string and find 2 items inside, a gold bracelet and a gold nugget. You put the nugget in your pocket and decide what to do with the bracelet. Do you want to put it on your wrist, or would you rather leave it behind and jump down into the room below? Oh, it's always worse when you find an item of jewellery in a box or a pouch, because you're like, if you find an item of jewellery on a corpse, you go, well, they were happy enough to wear it, I might as well give it a go. I mean, it's not foolproof, nothing like that ever is, but it does feel as though if you found an item of jewellery and it's not being worn, and it's not in someone's jewellery box or whatever, then you have to ask yourself why. Having said that, I am going to put it on my wrist. The bracelet shimmers slightly as you slide it over your wrist. It suddenly feels hot as it tightens around you, burning the skin. Bracelet is cursed by evil magic. Lose 1 skill point and 1 stamina point. So my skill is now 6. And my stamina is now 16. Not great. Let's be honest, not great. Unable to remove the bracelet, you have no choice but to jump down into the room below. If I hadn't found that chainmail, my skill would now be the same as the goblin I murdered. That is insane. 3 skill points lost, and I've been recording for under 40 minutes. The room is a disused torture chamber. An iron maiden lies open on the floor, and in the far corner you can see a wooden rack. Old, blood-stained instruments of pain litter the ground. A strong, musty smell fills the still air, making you feel a little queasy. Almost hidden by a pile of chains, you see an iron chest. Do you want to open it, or would you rather leave the chamber? There is a picture of the chamber. It's really, really good. It's absolutely crammed with manacles and hooks and spiky things, and you can see the chest wrapped in chains and the Iron Maiden in the foreground and the rack in the background. It's really good. Really strong bit of work. But yeah, I'm going to open the chest. Why not? Why not? The chest lid is very heavy, and you struggle to lift it. Inside you find 5 gold pieces, now up to 20 gold. A strange bronze-handled dagger with a blade made of opaque crystal, and a small silver box. So, add those to my character sheet. So, how many items have I found? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And I started with the Emerald Eye as well. So, I've got 9 items already. That is, that's an Ian Livingstone book. Question is, how many of these items are going to turn out to be absolutely required? Ahead of you, you see that the corridor leads to a narrow bridge which spans a deep pit. A rope ladder tied to the bridge descends into the dark depths of the pit below. Do you want to walk over the bridge and carry on up the corridor, or do you want a chance climbing down the rope ladder? Ooh, let's try going down the rope ladder. Oh no. It takes quite a long time to reach the bottom of the pit. It is almost pitch black and you can hardly see anything at all. Because, for some reason, despite knowing full well we were going to be descending into an underground labyrinth, we did not bring a lantern or a torch with us. I mean, I think we are an adventurer who kind of deserves everything they get, really. As your eyes adjust to the gloom, you hear some shuffling sounds coming from in front of you. Slowly, a vile, undead creature lumbers towards you. Its decaying innards protrude through holes in its maggot-ridden flesh. Its swollen tongue hangs down from its sickly purple mouth, and its deep-sunk red eyes stare straight towards you. Gurgling and hissing, the ghoul steps forward to attack. That is a lovely gory description. This is accompanied by a very strong, gory-looking image from Martin McKenna. I mean, it looks like a ghoul. It's got its arms outstretched, the tongue lolling, the eyes white and sightless. It's just really good. Really, really good. The ghoul has a skill of 8 and a stamina of 7, and if the ghoul manages to hit you 4 times, you'll be paralysed and eaten later. So that's nice. And it's almost certainly what is going to happen to me. So, given that I have very little prospect of success, having a skill of 6 at this point, and the ghoul having a skill of 8 and a stamina of 7, I am nonetheless going to roll some dice. I have been predictably paralysed and consumed by the ghoul. I did manage to reduce it to 3 stamina by hitting it once and successfully testing my luck. And if I'd managed to hit it again, I'd have tested my luck again, so it's just about possible I might have been able to do it. But yeah, I needed more luck than I actually had, as it were. I needed to roll better than average in order to successfully execute that plan. However, it's too early to call it a day, so I'm going to invoke the sausagey-fingered bookmark rule, and we will assume that we did defeat the ghoul, and I will keep my stamina at 8 and my luck at 8, and that will hopefully be reasonably balanced. So I'm kind of doing it like I did manage to kill it, but still took some damage, which seems sort of fair. I mean, I'm cheating. It's not fair at all, but, you know, you make these little accommodations with yourself. So I will immediately pause to scarf down some bangers and mash and a tiramisu, reducing my provisions to 7, but having a very nice meal, and restoring my stamina to 16. So, slightly full of carbs, I will head off onwards. As you walk back to the rope ladder, you stumble over something on the floor. You reach down and pick up a heavy shield. You sling it over your shoulder and climb back up the ladder onto the bridge. In the dim light of the corridor, you see that the shield is etched with strange runes around its edge, and has been polished so much that you can see your own reflection in it. You feel like it was worth fighting the ghoul after all to get such a magnificent shield, and set off down the corridor. I feel as though the shield ought to give me a bonus point of skill, a thing I could very definitely use at this point, but sadly not. The corridor comes to an end at a junction with turnings to the left and right. Do you want to walk down the left-hand corridor, or would you rather go down the right-hand corridor? Well, we went left last time, and we'll go right this time, but this is the first genuinely geographical choice we've been able to make since the start of the dungeon. So, very linear. The corridor soon turns sharply left. Around the bend you see an alcove in the left-hand wall, where water gently trickles from the mouth of a stone fountain carved in the shape of a hideous-looking hag. Do you want to drink from the fountain, or would you rather keep on walking up the corridor? There is a illustration of the fountain, and beautifully rendered. He's exceptionally good at faces, Martin McKenna, and the face of this hag is very nicely drawn indeed. However, it really does highlight that you are, in a sense, drinking hag dribble, which isn't spectacularly appetising. I think if the hag was more stylised and less realistic, it would be less upsetting. Because at the end of the day, it could easily just be water, but it does look like you're drinking hag dribble. So do you know what? I'm going to let it well alone. You soon arrive at another alcove in the left-hand wall. Inside you see a stone throne carved as though it has been made out of 100 open-mouthed skulls. Do you want to sit on the throne, or would you rather carry on walking up the corridor? I'm going to give the throne of skulls a pass, thank you very much. I don't feel as though it's a comfortable place to sit apart from anything else. All of those weird, knobbly, bony cheekbones and teeth sticking out. Yeah, I'll give the novelty throne a miss. On the right-hand wall of the corridor you see a large oak door with big iron hinges. The skeletons of several small rodents are nailed to the door. Do you want to open the door, or would you rather carry on up the corridor? Well, we ignored the last one. Let's have a look at this one. The door opens into a cavernous room in which the floor is littered with small bones and debris. Standing in the middle of the debris, you see an ugly two-headed troll. It is busy sharpening its large axe on a spinning stone wheel that is powered by a treadle. One of the troll's heads turns to stare at you. Its face is covered with warts and its large teeth stick out of its drooling mouth like tusks. It is violent, stupid, and very dangerous. And we know that this is the entity that caused Henry Delacour to abandon his quest. So that suggests that maybe the second Emerald Eye might be in this foul beast's possession, suggesting that I should definitely try and get past it. There is an illustration also of the two-headed troll. It's really, really good. Really, really good. Very simple in a way. It looks like what you'd expect of a troll with two heads sharpening a big axe, but it's very nicely rendered. I am, against my better judgment, going to try and fight the troll. I'm going to kind of hope that there's something in my backpack that could prove useful. No, it's just a fight. The angry troll walks slowly towards you, swinging its mighty axe through the air. You breathe in deeply and charge at the troll. The two-headed troll has a skill of 8 and a stamina of 9. So I think, once again, I'm probably going to die. But in order to find out whether that happens, I'm going to roll some dice. Against all the odds, I have successfully defeated the two-headed troll. I was reduced to 8 stamina points, and my luck is now down to 6, because I tested my luck twice in the course of that battle. So I am going to immediately scoff some provisions. We will eat a portion of Christmas pudding, getting the old stamina back to 12, and then, slightly bizarrely, we'll follow that with some vol au vents to get us back up to 16. Excellent. Provisions now 5, stamina now 16. The troll's axe is too big and heavy for you to use, so you leave it on the floor. You rummage through the debris and find 2 gold pieces. We're now up to 22 gold, a silver charm in the shape of a lion's head, a broken dagger and a silver arrowhead. So, not the emerald eye I was looking for, but some stuff nonetheless. Now, we've got a kind of skull necklace in the shape of a bird. We've got a gold nugget. And we've got a silver lion charm. I'm feeling as though there's maybe some threads running through these items. And I think I might be needing to collect a series of items in order to defeat the final boss of this dungeon, which I'm sure will come as no surprise to anyone who's familiar with the work of Ian Livingstone. The corridor is long and narrow, with just the occasional burning torch on the wall to light the way. You walk along slowly, ever alert to potential danger. A rat suddenly scurries across the damp floor before disappearing into a hole in the wall. On and on you walk, until you hear the sound of flowing water in the distance. The corridor eventually ends at the bank of a fast-flowing underground river. A crudely made raft is tied to a stake in the bank. Do you want to climb onto the raft and float downstream, or would you rather retrace your steps and walk back to the last junction? Let's see what happens if we float downstream. That seems the most interesting of the options. The channel narrows and the flow of the river increases. You are soon in a tunnel with a very low ceiling and are forced to lie flat on the raft. Ahead of you, you hear the roar of water crashing into unseen depths, and you realise to your horror that you are heading for a waterfall. Suddenly, the raft hits a rock and breaks apart before plunging over the edge of the waterfall. You are bowled over and crash into a dark, watery grave. Your adventure is over. So, that hasn't gone at all well. That's gone very badly indeed. The entire adventure seems to have been somewhat cursed from the very moment I rolled up the character. Sometimes you do roll up cursed characters, and Quack Quack Flamenco seems to have been one of them. I've no real read for how hard this is as a book. Ian Livingstone books are usually pretty challenging, but at the same time, the design is relatively straightforward, so maybe it'll be fairly easy to gather the laundry list of items that you need. Regardless, I think it is not going to be a double sausage episode. I think I will stick here. It seems an appropriate point to call the recording to a halt. I don't think there's any realistic chance that if I continue, I'm going to make it much further into the dungeon anyway, assuming that it gets more rather than less dangerous. So we will pause the recording there. I've had a good time with it. There are some alarm bells ringing in terms of the design, but the quality of the writing, the actual mechanical writing, really elevates it. And I think he might well have got away with doing a relatively simple design simply by doing it really well. So we'll see if that is still the view I have once I've played the book on my own time and all that. I'm going to go and do that now, and I'll be back for you in just a few moments with some closing remarks. Tatty bye. I have finished Eye of the Dragon. I actually beat it semi-honestly on my second attempt, which was something of a surprise. My feelings about the book are complicated. I think in absolute terms it's not all that good, but at the same time I definitely enjoyed playing it. I know I'm the poster child for mixed feelings that resolve into a positive glow, but hear me out, I reckon I can defend this one. Let's start with the reasons why you might not like Eye of the Dragon. It's got a lot of the features of some of Livingstone's less impressive work. It's extremely linear. There's more than a hint of Caverns of the Snow Witch going on, and although there's a number of places that you can make decisions about your route, things have a tendency to converge very quickly back to the linear path, which makes such freedom of movement as the book allows feel kind of illusory. Describing this as a labyrinth is a bit rich when it is less confusingly laid out than most UK hospitals. I said that I'd beat the book on a second attempt, and when I went back to find the bits I'd missed, including some quite important elements, I discovered that I'd already seen the lion's share of the dungeon. It's the exact opposite of the problems that bedeviled Sorcery, where, even with the expanded paragraph count, the adventures had a tendency to feel brief, thanks to the complexity of the systems that were bolted onto the side. Here, Livingstone confines himself entirely to the basic end of fighting fantasy mechanics, and the result is something that feels a little bit of a slog, something that would have benefited from an additional mechanic just to give some encounters a bit more depth. As it is, there's so many encounters that it can be really hard to keep them straight in your head and work out where you haven't been yet. And this approach isn't all bad by any means. Linear dungeons do have the virtue of being quite easy to explore, and if you took a systematic approach to early attempts, there's nothing that's going to be super tricky to find. There's no timing-dependent puzzles where you need to sequence your actions to get to a certain point, for example. It's friendly to newcomers to the format, and that's a worthwhile consideration when it's your first gamebook in over a decade. Overall, though, I do feel like the geographic design lacks depth. In a long corridor with encounters branching off to the sides, there's not much decision-making that goes into deciding whether or not to go into each encounter. Ultimately, most players will quickly grasp that there's going to be stuff they need to find, and that means they need to open every door and rummage thoroughly through the contents. It can make exploring feel extremely routine, in a way that contrasts unfavourably with a book like Island of the Undead, where you get a great deal more freedom in how you approach the action. While we're on the subject of exploring and rummaging, we should mention items. There are a lot of items to be found in this book. Between my first and second attempts, I counted 46 different items that could be found, and the list eventually expanded to 66, and I'm not even sure that's all of them. In a 407 section gamebook, that equates to roughly one item for every 6 sections, which is frankly insane. Obviously, that means not all of the items you can find are useful. Indeed, the vast majority of items that you can find are completely useless. There's so many pointless knickknacks in this book that I can't help but feel that Ian Livingstone was maybe poking fun at people who complained about the number of items in his work, or perhaps commenting on the legendary avariciousness of the average adventuring party. Why can you find so many fishhooks in this dungeon? Would anyone but a lunatic expect a carved wooden duck to be a vital component of an adventure? Why did I decide to carefully cart a picture of an owl about with me? All questions without a single sane answer. There's plenty of handy things buried amongst the giant list, as you would expect, but they are still a definite minority. While I don't think there's anything in here to justify clogging the character sheet with quite so much useless tat, at least it's fractionally less of a scavenger hunt than I was expecting. Don't get me wrong, there's definitely a bunch of stuff you are going to want to beat this book, but there's not that much that's required to win. You will definitely need the second Emerald Eye. There's a door that requires an item to open it, although you do get a choice of 2 items, which is more generous than you might expect. There's a spell that's necessary to get out of a nasty trap as well. That's essentially 2.5 required items once you factor in the door with the alternative opening mechanism. There's 1 item whereby if you don't have it, a mandatory fight will be very dangerous, but it's not strictly needed, and if you've done okay with gathering skill bonuses, you might well be fine without it. There's also a final puzzle where you essentially have to pull 5 levers in the correct sequence. There's 5 keys that will each reveal one part of the sequence, but if you have 4 out of 5, you'll still have the complete sequence because there'll only be one place left in the sequence for the 5th lever. On my successful playthrough, I only had 3 of the keys, but that was still enough to make the position of the final 2 levers into a 50-50 chance, which I just happened to make. So, to be certain of success, you need 4 keys and 2.5 items, which sounds like a lot, but actually isn't that bad, given the linear quality of the adventure. I actually really like the way the keys act to constrain the possibilities of the final lever puzzle. If you somehow manage to find your way to the end with no keys, then you'll be looking at a 1 in 5 chance to get the first lever right, followed by a 1 in 4 for the second, a 1 in 3 for the third, and so on. That works out to be a 0.008% chance of success if you've screwed up that badly, which is, that's 8 in 1,000, I want to say. That's not good odds. 1 key gets you to 0.04, which is still less than 1 in 20, but 2 keys gets you up to 16%, which is unlikely, but at 1 in 6 might be worth a punt, and 3 keys gets you to that 50-50 chance that I made. So not having 4 out of 5 keys doesn't turn it into a lost cause, which is a really interesting bit of writing. A failed lever pull is an instant kill, so you get immediate feedback if you want to brute force it. By Ian Livingstone standards, this qualifies as unfathomably generous. It's also nice that the section references written on the keys only lead to clues rather than being strictly necessary for progress. If you are going to do hidden paragraphs, this is arguably the best way to go about it. While I've got issues with the linear structure and carting about enough tat that it feels like an episode of Supermarket Sweep, I think my biggest problem with the book is more conceptual. The book just does not make a lick of sense as a premise. You have this dungeon that feels incredibly artificial and weird, that is just stuffed under Darkwood Forest for no clear reason. It's clearly a designed space on some level. There's all manner of intentional traps and puzzles designed to kill you, but at the same time, there's a bunch of orcs, goblins and trolls who seem to be just hanging out there for reasons that are unexplained. Still more bizarre are the smattering of NPCs who make their home in the dungeon. These include a merchant, because of course there's a merchant, and we're going to come back to him. There's a woman who'll sell you clues about later traps in the dungeon as well. Why is she there? Who built the dungeon? Is it the same person who made the mysteriously fatal dragon statue? Why is any of this happening? The book has no answers. I found it especially galling because in my head I thought I'd figured it out. The dungeon is clearly a deliberately designed gauntlet of monsters and traps, and who in the fighting fantasy world cannot get enough of gauntlets of monsters and traps. Baron Succumvit of Fang, of course, he's even referenced in the introduction. In my head, this weird dungeon was clearly where Succumvit was trying out different challenges for potential inclusion in his Death Trap dungeon. He'd clearly stuffed a nice bit of treasure underground as a lure for unwary adventurers. I was ready for the big reveal being that the mysterious stranger calling himself Henry Delacour was either Succumvit himself or one of his trusted agents trying to trick adventurers into descending into the labyrinth. And this is absolutely not what is happening. It's not at all clear what is happening. It feels really weird, and it felt like a missed opportunity. It's not often, I think, the backstory I had in my head was more interesting than the backstory the book actually presents me with, but this is definitely one of those occasions. I find it fascinating that even by 2005, the notion of the dungeon had become so ossified in popular culture that Ian Livingstone did not feel the need to explain why there's a massive underground complex filled with weirdos and traps with some treasure at the end. I think there's been recently some bits of popular culture that have explored the idea of dungeons as a kind of magical but natural phenomena. The hit anime Solo Leveling explores this sort of idea, giving you a world in which dungeons simply appear magically and must be cleared by adventurers before the monsters within break containment. And I really like the idea of dungeons that appear in the world almost at random or accrete slowly over time, room by room, by some peculiar occult process. It's something I might explore in a future gamebook, the idea of dungeons cropping up like mushroom patches if you don't do something about them quickly. None of that makes the core narrative here feel any more satisfying. For whatever reason, Ian Livingstone didn't feel like the book needed a proper antagonist or any sense of purpose. The dungeon simply is. And it's hard not to come away with the feeling that there's quite a lot of this book that he didn't spend all that much time on. It's got that mildly frenzied first draft feel I associate with a certain kind of amphetamine-fueled pulp fiction from the 1950s. Some of this is doubtless down to the fact that in 2005 Ian Livingstone probably had a lot going on that felt more important, or at least more financially consequential, than negling the minutiae of the backstory of a gamebook aimed at 11-year-olds. That slightly frenzied feel permeates the whole book, and it's not always to its detriment. It might not make any sense, but the energy levels are off the charts. And whatever else may have changed over the years, Ian Livingstone's knack for creating imaginative and faintly ludicrous set pieces is undimmed. They might be bizarre, but they are definitely memorable, and there's a lot of points where his prose really sparkles as well. You've got a selection of hoary old fantasy gaming cliches in here, but often they've been given a little twist to make them feel fresh. I'm not convinced there's anything actually useful being sold by the merchant, who just so happens to look a lot like the author in the illustration, and that's fun and quite a weird experience, somewhat akin to browsing the infamous middle aisle in a branch of Aldi. There's a witch who'll give you a helping hand, but only if you fight her first and then call her ugly. Her arms are made of snakes. One of the keys is hidden at the bottom of a jar of healing paste in a room where everything has been painted green for extremely unclear reasons. A beautiful woman, who is actually an aged woman in disguise, will sell you 3 potions, none of which get used, and one of which seems to be entirely for turning your skin a different colour, which is great fun at parties, I'm sure, but of very limited use in the adventuring world. A fight with some brutish orcs is interrupted by a mercenary who offers to give you a hand for money. Where did he come from? Who knows? And who cares? There's a disembodied wizard in one room who will refuse to tell you how he got there. The demon from the House of Hell is just casually roaming the dungeon pretending to be an old man. Make sure you stay and listen to the insane laughter in the teleporter room, even though it feels like the stupidest idea, because if you go into the teleporter early, you'll get sent back to the start with a massive skill and stamina punishment. Oh, and there's a dwarvish equivalent of an Airbnb in the dungeon towards the end. It's just littered with madness, and I do genuinely enjoy that. There's plenty of standard dungeon stuff in there as well. It's absolutely littered with weapons, jewellery, bits of armour and mysterious bottles like a cross between an army surplus store, Claire's accessories and a branch of lush. Some of them will be magically helpful, some of them will be extremely cursed or poisonous, and there's no way to tell the difference without trying them on or giving them a taste. In a moment of sublime genius, there's so many cursed bits of apparel that some cursed gear will actually counteract other bits of cursed gear, which is both helpful and also oddly funny. I love the idea of being so cursed that all my many hexes start interfering with each other like competing Wi-Fi signals. One element that does straightforwardly land for me is the presence in the latter third of the book of a dwarf sidekick. I've said before that NPCs are quite hard to do well in gamebooks, but Livingstone does a great job with the dwarf Littlebig. It helps that he's not optional. You will definitely find him, and that means Livingstone doesn't have to write around whether he's there or not. He's also functionally immortal. He doesn't have his own stamina score, which means that as long as you're alive, he's alive. That's another smart move, because again it means that you don't have to write around the possibility of him having snuffed it at some point in the adventure. He's got a simply drawn personality. He's literal-minded and optimistic, but he's depicted consistently within that narrow field, so you do get a sense of him as a character. He doesn't do anything surprising, but he also never really overshadows the player, which is also important. He's there to be a sidekick, not to do the adventure for you. And there's a few little interesting mechanics in there. He's going to help you in some fights by giving you an extra attack. That's a much simpler and more elegant mechanic than creating an entire second stat block for him. It dodges the possibility of him dying in combat because he just gives you an extra attack. There's no stamina involved. And you get the bonus of him fighting by your side, but you don't get the second bonus of having another stamina bar to tank damage for you. And I'm fine with that, honestly. With a massive pile of provisions, it's quite hard to run out of stamina. It's not entirely consistent. Sometimes he has the same skill as you, and sometimes he has a skill of 8, which is much less helpful in the later stages when the fights get tough. But it's still a really clever way of having a sidekick support you in a fight without the headache that would come from an early demise. Lastly, there's a really cool bit where when you find Littlebig, your dialogue with him reveals that you haven't come across the Emerald Eye yet. Given that you come across him fairly late in the adventure, this is enormously reassuring and means that, should you fail, you know you don't need to worry about finding the emerald until you've found Littlebig. And this hugely constrains the area you need to search in. It's not something that's a massive problem anyway, given how simple the design of Eye of the Dragon is, but I do appreciate being given some clues for the scavenger hunt. I think that's something even more important in gamebooks with a more open design, giving a player subtle, or indeed not so subtle hints about where and when items can be accessed. And it's still nice to see here, and gives a welcome sense of narrative to proceedings. There's a few other cool mechanics in there as well. If you are unlucky enough to wake up the Black Dragon, you'll have to fight an absolute beast of a monster, and test your luck each and every round, or suffer additional damage. So not only will you likely die, but it'll drain your luck incredibly fast, and that's potentially interesting design space if you want to make luck a big feature after that fight. There's a cool little set piece where you get covered in flesh-eating grubs. You roll 2d6 to see how many grubs there are, and another 2d6 to see how many you manage to brush off before they really get their teeth into you. If you don't manage to get rid of them all, any that remain will do 1 stamina damage, and then you have another crack at brushing another 2d6 off. It's simple, it works, and it feels right, which is always nice to see. I love it when mechanics help conjure the image that the text is trying to convey. There's a very clever bit of writing whereby the Emerald Eye is hidden in a room that just feels like it ought to have a big reward in it. It's a tough fight with a particularly vile creature that feels like a key moment in the story, and my video game primed brain more or less expected to find something important in that space. And it's often helpful to lean into genre conventions at the right time. We've been conditioned by digital Skinner boxes to expect a reward when we pull a really heavy lever that's tried quite hard to kill us, and I think you ignore that kind of thing at your peril. It's not all great on the mechanical front. There's a lot of potential skill penalties in this book, but there's also plenty of places that will hand out extra skill points as well. It's not super punishing early on when the fights are very manageable, but it will absolutely bite you in the bottom if you make it to the later stages, because there's a few mandatory fights that are very tough indeed. I'm always of two minds when it comes to messing with skill. On the one hand, it does make sense to fiddle with all three stats because that creates variety, but on the other hand, losing skill always feels much worse than losing stamina or luck because of how brutal the combat system can be. Running simulation shows that even a single point of skill has a big impact on your chances of winning a combat. It's like that old bugbear of classic tabletop game design where level drain is a mechanic that every single player I've ever encountered absolutely loathes. It just feels like taking away your progress, and it feels like taking away the core fantasy of being an awesome adventurer, and both of those suck. I think on the whole, despite the design space being interesting, it's better to hand out more power than to take power away, unless you're going to make that the narrative focus. I actually quite like the idea of a game book where the fights don't get any harder as the story progresses. It's just that your character gets weaker and weaker. And so long as you write that, I think, in a way that doesn't feel too punishing, I think most players will buy into that as a narrative premise. Ultimately, Eye of the Dragon is a weird old time. It has the air of something written very quickly without a great deal of thought, but also the air of something written by someone with a wealth of relevant experience and talent. It's clearly mad as a sack of weasels, but at the same time there's lots of really clever touches scattered throughout. It's got some of the best descriptions I've seen in a gamebook for a while, and serves as a reminder that Ian Livingstone is one of the top guys when he's on form. The artwork is also exceptionally good. I think it's some of McKenna's best work on the series so far. His line work is excellent, his shading is evocative, and the proportions and framing expertly straddle the line between realism and caricature. Honestly, there is a lot to like in here. There's a huge amount of imagination on display, and that counts for a lot, but I just wish the layout was more interesting and that some thought, any thought, had been put into some kind of backstory or framing device, because absent that, the whole thing does feel curiously aimless. I still basically had a good time with it though. That is all for this episode. Don't forget that if you're enjoying this podcast, you have the option to support me over on patreon.com/hjdoom, where for a single English pound or local equivalent, you can get access to a whole bunch of gaming stuff and bask in the warm glow of keeping my nonsense ad-free and flowing for all. I'm currently hard at work on a very 70s-inspired science fiction gamebook as a patron reward, and I'm also producing my secular podcast, Popular Antiquarian, where I regularly get my patrons to vote on new episodes. I put a lot of stuff out into the world, and I'm extremely grateful when people think that that's worth paying for. Next episode of Fantastic Fights is going to be a bonus episode where we are playing a digital game book written by the great Dave Morris, so hopefully that will be a really good time. You can contact me in the meantime by email at hjdoomretrofun, all one word, @gmail.com, or by following me on Blue Sky at hjdoom. Thank you very much for listening. Take care, and I'll see you soon.